It is said to be a truly terrifying movie and the highest-grossing horror film on television in the world. Based on the horror master Stephen King's novel of the same name, The Return of the Ugly, the movie scared the hell out of the audience as soon as it was released, and they rushed to their favorite theaters to watch it with their friends. The story begins with a boy chasing after a paper boat in the rain, only to find the paper boat drifting down the waterway. The boy hurriedly gets down to his stomach and nests in the dark, only to find a man with gold eyes in the darkness. The boy was startled by the sight of an ugly boy with golden eyes. After the ugly boy kept on luring him, George finally let down his guard and put his hand into the sewer to retrieve the paper boat. But the next moment, the ugly boy opened his blood-spattered mouth and bit off his arm. The empty street was filled with George's bullying howls. He tried to run away from the place, but the ugly boy was able to extend his arm and dragged him directly into the sewer. After the disappearance, the town saw a series of odd events, all tied to children. Townley, studying in class, feared a picture on the wall, blocking her eyes whenever she passed it. This time, she noticed the frame was bent and bravely fixed it, but then it fell. Forced to rehang it, she heard a strange voice and turned to see a terrifying lady before her. Frozen, Townley heard a sound behind and saw the woman again with an eerie smile. Terrified, she ran out. Next was the school bully, Humpty Dumpty. He was in the library reading about the town's history when a tree picture kept appearing in the book. One night, the tree picture was on the wall, then on the floor. As he entered, a head appeared, and Fatty quickly shut the book under him. 8 voices echoed behind him. He saw a red balloon in the library, visible only to him, so he followed it. At the stairs, a headless corpse rushed at him, turning into a creepy clown, scaring Fatty. He ran until he hit the caretaker, and the clown vanished. Relieved, Fatty thought such a plot needed good gear. He began, his voice steady despite the pain. Today showed me the true meaning of friendship and support. When those bullies attacked, I thought I was alone. But you all stood by me, and that means everything. He looked at Belle, grateful for her kindness. Your quick thinking saved us, and I'll never forget it. Fats continued, while we may have set out to find Bill's brother, it was the bonds we formed along the way that truly matter. Together, we can face any challenge. So let's keep searching for Bill's brother and support each other through thick and thin. With renewed determination, they knew their journey was far from over, but together, they could overcome anything. When Bailey saw that Fatty's bedroom was covered with a mass of literature, Fatty told the men that it contained all the history of the town, and that he had discovered through his researches that every 27 years a large number of children disappeared from the town, and that all the clues led to a place known as the police station, and Bill, suspecting that the missing brother might have been confined there, inquired of Fatty as to the whereabouts of the police station, but Fatty regretfully stated that he had not found it, and that the men had not found it, and he had not found it. But Fatty regrettably said he hadn't found it yet. Everyone thought Fatty was making up a story, even Bill, but after leaving Fatty's house, all the men were struck by the same strange phenomenon. Asthmatic Eddie was passing by the town's haunted house when he fell ill, and just as he was looking for his pills, the door of the haunted house opened automatically, and the sudden noise startled Eddie. He dropped the whole packet of pills on the floor just as he was. As George looked at him, he knelt down to pick up the pills, and a dry hand reached out. "Do you think this is going to help me, Eddie?" It was the first time Eddie had ever seen such an ugly monster, and he was so scared that he fell to the ground right away. The next thing he knew, the monster was trying to grab Eddie into the haunted house. The clown's words, along with his terrifying, magical laugh, sent Eddie running away. Meanwhile, Bailey, who had just returned home, heard the same thing in the bathroom. Bailey looked through the drain for a long time, but couldn't make out who was talking down there. To find out, he put a tape measure down the drain, but when he pulled it up, there was nothing but a wisp of bloody hair. As Bailey was about to go over the fence, the monster disappeared. He stood there, frozen, trying to understand what had just happened, his heart pounding in his chest. He couldn't shake off the feeling that he was being watched, that the monster was lurking somewhere in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to strike again. When he did, hair shot from the drain and wrapped around him. Blood emerged. Seeing it, Bailey screamed for his dad, who didn't notice the blood. Bill, searching for his brother, saw Georgie's lamps turn on by themselves. He thought Georgie was back, but the room was empty. With his brother's toys, he heard footsteps, rushed to the drawing room, and saw his brother's figure. Chasing him, he found him in the basement. His brother seemed different and spoke strangely. And there was the wind, 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 and there was a wind, and there was the wind, and there was the wind, and there was a wind, and there was the wind, and there was a wind, and there was the wind. The next day, Bailey called some of his friends home to watch the shower room, and after they could see the blood inside, Bailey didn't know what to do, but at least he could prove that he wasn't hallucinating. When they talked about what happened, they finally realized that they had been experiencing strange behavior. They had been experiencing strange occurrences over the past few days, and almost all of them had seen the saintly little clown, but just then they saw laughing Dad and his classmate Blackie's car parked by the side of the road. Bailey guessed that Blackie was being bullied, so they immediately decided to go and help, and they soon found Blackie beside Sissy, who had been bullied. Without further ado, they started a stone-throwing battle with the young father, and finally, thanks to their joint efforts, several of the young fathers had been beaten to a pulp and had been able to escape. When they went upstairs, Blackie became one of them. However, when they got back to the town, they noticed that there were more posters on the streets. Fatty guessed that the disappearance of the children must have something to do with Ugly, and Blackie, who was next to them at night, also told them about how he had seen Ugly a couple of days ago. He was working part-time when he heard a noise from the locked door behind him. Then the door was slammed open by an invisible force, and a golden-faced Ugly stood inside and greeted him. When he looked back, Ugly was no longer there. Black told some people that the burnt arms reminded him of the fire he had encountered when he was a child, and that was the most frightening memory in his heart, for his parents had died in that accident. After hearing what Blackie said, everyone thought that each of them had seen a different picture, but all of them had seen what they feared the most. After discussing the matter, they all agreed that Ugly was specialized in hurting children who were afraid of something. After confirming that the murderer might not be human, Bill thought of something and took his friends to his garage to show them the information he had collected in searching for his little brother. Bill noticed that every missing child had a sewer pipe next to the hill, and that these pipes intersected near the haunted house, which made him suspect that his brother might be locked up in the haunted house, so he decided to go to the haunted house to get him out, and as his companions couldn't leave him alone, they went to the haunted house in town. When they went upstairs, they heard a cry for help. The next time, they saw a missing girl being pulled away by an invisible force. While the three of them were about to rescue the girl, Edie heard someone calling her name behind her. When she turned around, Bill and Richie had already entered the room, and the next moment, the door closed automatically. Edie rushed to open the door, but the floor of the corridor cracked open, and a pair of strange hands clapped on her shoulders. He was so scared that he slipped and fell on the table, dislocating his arm instantly. But before he could scream, the old refrigerator in front of his eyes opened automatically, and then a huge ugly man appeared in front of him in a very strange posture, and then jumped on Addie unexpectedly. Addie was scared and kept slapping the ugly man's face, but the ugly man was not angry, and he even grabbed her arm, pretending to eat it. As Eddie grew more frightened, the clown got excited. He opened his bloody mouth to swallow Eddie, but Bill and Richie escaped. Eddie's fear lessened when they appeared, angering the clown. Just as he lunged, an iron bar pierced his head. Belle and her group had arrived to help. The clown wanted to kill them but was too injured. He retreated. Bill thought they should kill the clown at the haunted house to save the children, but only Belle agreed. The others believed the clown wouldn't return for 27 years, by which time they'd be grown and he'd be too weak. They saw no point in risking it, as Blackie said. With his parents gone, he could have left town any time, but little did anyone know that the next morning, Shaw Chick would arrive at Bailey's house to take him away. When they found out, Bill's buddies were furious, regrouping at the door of the haunted house with their weapons, and then they marched inside. Meanwhile, Bailey emerged from his stupor, discovering all sorts of children's toys piled up around him. Looking up, he saw the bodies of the missing children floating in the air. A strange noise sounded behind him, and when he turned back, he realized it was Ugly, dancing out of the room in a magical way. But when Ugly picked up Bailey and shouted at him, the girl said something surprising. "I'm not afraid of you." Ugly went down on Bailey, giving him quite a show, but there was no scent of fear, and she was very angry. Once again, Bailey fell into a deep sleep. When Bill and his men found him, he was floating like the other children. They managed to pull Bailey down, but he remained unconscious until Humpty Dumpty kissed him. During their celebration, Bill spotted his missing brother. George, with a broken arm, appeared before Bill, causing him great pain. Bill approached slowly, took out his pistol, and shot him in the head. Yet, he saw the boy was still alive. When George, with a broken shoulder, stood before Bill, he felt deep pain. He walked slowly, drew his pistol, and shot him. Seeing the floating children, Bill realized his brother was dead. George fell, convulsed, and transformed into a clown. The men, gathering their courage, fought the clown, but they were soon defeated. Bill was overcome by the clown, who then vanished. When Ugly saw that the children's fear of him was fading, he proposed taking them away to help them forget their grudges. But Ugly didn't realize how united the children were. They fought him again with a fierce determination to fight to the end. Ugly couldn't feed on their fear and became weak. The children surrounded him and beat him until he was completely dispersed. After Joker's death, the remains floating in the air slowly descended, and he found his brother's yellow raincoat among them. This strong boy couldn't hold back his tears. After leaving the haunted house, they all agreed that if Joker returned after 27 years, no matter where they were, they would come back and kill him again. Solidarity was their best weapon against fear, and that's the key takeaway. Today's story is over. This is Yasser Arafat. Please tell me what you think of my video in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe the channel to see the next interesting horror video.